All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is foreign policy during the Cold War. And Nixon came up with a policy called détente, which is a French term, okay? So, well, actually, he didn't do it. Somebody else did it that worked with him. But anyway, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, this evil guy right here, okay, was very influential in many President Nixon's foreign policies achievements, including the negotiations to end the Vietnam War. Both Kissinger and Nixon were supporters of a 19th century, that's 1800s, concept called realpolitik. And if you look at it, it looks like real politics. Well, what they're saying, what the concept of realpolitik is the idea that foreign policy should be based on power and nothing else. Does this get you more powerful? The idea comes from a book called The Prince, written by Machiavelli. Okay, basically, do all that you can. Don't worry about whose toes you step on or how right or wrong you are. The sole concentration to being a ruler is to get more power. So if you have to deal with things like My Lai and other things like that, fine, as long as it gets you more power. Anything that diminishes your power, that's the stuff you want to stay away from. So, realpolitik taught that the enemy of your enemy is your friend, okay? This is actually from an ancient Chinese philosopher named Sun Tzu, and it's the art of war. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, so in the Cold War, who's our biggest enemy? Russia, obviously. Well, what if China becomes Russia's enemy? See, what had happened is, right here, okay? Let's see, Nixon's, well, let me back it up a little bit. Okay, about 10 years before this, Mao Zedong, the leader of communist China, goes to Russia. And he says, hey buddy, hey pal, how about you give me some of them nukes? And Russia says, no, because you're crazy, Mao. Okay, we're not giving you any nukes. So there was a split in the second world. Y'all remember first, second, and third world, right? First world is capitalist, second world is communist, third world is undecided. The second world splits in half, and there's two camps. One is the Soviet camp, and the other one is the Chinese camp. Well, if Russia and China are enemies, and Russia is our biggest enemy, therefore China should be our ally. That's what realpolitik says, okay? So Nixon does something unprecedented. He is the first American president to ever go to China, and he is also the first American president to ever meet with Mao Zedong. And they shake hands, they have state dinners, they go visit the Wall of China together, the Great Wall of China together, and they sign pretty much an alliance. So Nixon's recognition of communist China to put pressure on the Soviets, who had angered the Chinese by refusing to give them nuclear weapons before. All right, so we got pictures right here. We've got Nixon and Mao at the Great Wall of China, and that's Nixon's wife to his right, okay? In 1972, Nixon met with the new leader of the Soviet Union, Leonid Brezhnev, okay? Nikita Khrushchev had gotten out, if you remember, and under the Kennedy administration, okay? He was forced to resign. And they had what's called the Moscow Summit, where they discussed SALT, okay? SALT, not table salt, but the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, okay? What's our strategic arms? Nuclear weapons. So they're basically saying, should we limit nuclear weapons? And they came up with an agreement. Yes, we should. There's too many nukes floating around, and it's too much of a hazard, and it's too much of a security risk for each side to have 20,000 nukes. So they said, okay, again, I destroy a nuke, you destroy a nuke. I destroy one, you destroy one. And we're going to verify and watch each other destroy these nukes. So anyway, that's what SALT is, y'all. It talks about getting rid of nuclear bombs. Now, let's be honest, y'all. If they say, you got to get rid of a nuke, which nuke are you going to get rid of? The one from 1945 or the one from 1972? You're going to get rid of the old crappy one that doesn't have a missile attached to it, right? The one you have to drop out of a plane. Are we making the world a safer place by getting rid of the older ones? I guess. Is it really going to make a difference? No, because we could still blow up the entire world 4 times over between the two of us, between us and the Soviets. So it's a feel-good measure. It's made to bring tension down. Which leads me to our next point. Bringing tension down or relaxing tensions is called détente. Okay, that was our foreign policy. We're trying to relax the tension. President Richard Nixon carried out groundbreaking and effective foreign policies in connection with which country? Well, since I've been talking about China for the last 5 minutes, I hope you picked that one. Okay. All right, let's move on. All right, Ford and Carter. Ooh, Dumb and Dumber here. Anyway, so the next president that comes in, by the way, we're going to talk about what happens to each president. We're covering foreign policy for the first half of this chapter. The next half of this chapter is all domestic stuff. If you've noticed, we've pretty much been on foreign policy the whole time. Okay, so President Gerald Ford comes in. Nixon, to make a long story short, he gets impeached and he quits. He quits being president. His replacement is Gerald Ford. Okay, so Gerald Ford carried on the concept of détente, which is relaxing tensions with the Soviets, with the Helsinki Accords. It's considered a major victory for the Soviets since it ratified or approved the World War II territorial gains by limiting obsolete weapons. All right, President Carter, that's the next president. Ford's only one-term president. Carter comes in, and he is one of the worst presidents in history. Carter is a very honest man. He's a nice man, but he's a terrible leader. I'm sure you know some people like that, okay? The guy is genuinely trying to make things better, but he's messing it up because he doesn't have a backbone. He's like Neville Chamberlain in America, okay? So, President Jimmy Carter wanted to continue the concept of SALT, which is, again, Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, but he also wanted to make a significant gesture that he wanted to be friends with the Soviets. So, he wants to hold hands with the Soviets and sing Kumbaya and declare that the Cold War is over. It's not. So what he does to be friendly to the Soviets, he cancels plans to build the B-1 bomber, which would have been the most modern bomber on the face of the planet. And he also cancels plans to develop the neutron bomb. And the Soviets basically said, well, thank you, Mr. Carter, but we're going to keep developing ours. Okay? So he basically gave up something huge and got nothing in return from the Soviets. He signed treaties limiting the use of short-range nuclear weapons. Big deal. Okay, do you need short-range nuclear weapons if you have long-range ones? Long-range weapons can actually hit short-range targets. So it didn't do much, but it sounds good on paper. Okay. Carter's SALT negotiations came to a screeching halt after the Soviet Union, who he had been very nice to, invaded Afghanistan in 1980. So they invaded one of our allies, even though we had been being nice to them. So Carter's foreign policy is an absolute disaster. The man does not know how to stand up to any pressure at all, okay, from the Soviets.